In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, may the peace and blessings of Allah the Exalted be upon the Prophet Muhammad and his purified progeny, and may the damnation of Allah be upon their enemies. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is our 8th episode where we will continue to discuss the ahadith relating to the merits of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, and where they said, "Ghulu fi fadlina ma shi'tum," say whatever you like in regard to our merits. But before we get on to the other ahadith about this matter, I'll just mention about our previous episodes. Of course, we spoke about different concepts relating to Ghulu, and we saw that there was a very good response from these episodes. Of course, some people did get emotional because one figure was very popular. However, we said we are still open for anyone to come and answer this and show that some of these clips have been taken out of context, or that the person even did tawbah later on from such statements. So anyone can come and prove us wrong on these clips, and we welcome this as well, because if these clips are taken out of context, this would be good in exposing the Nawasib. And it would be good that Ghulu actually wasn't said, but one has to come and prove this from the clips. We also saw some Nawasib and some Mukhalifin trying to respond, and even one of the Mukhalifin propagandists that we showed in previous episodes actually made a so-called response. And inshallah ta'ala we can reply to this at some point, but the main priority is continuing with this series, and if we have time for a response to the video, we will do so. So we discussed the previous ahadith and we showed that there were some variations when it came to this. All of them had basically the same sentence that say anything about our merits as you wish. And some of them, for example, mentioned about them being makhluqeen, so them being creations. Others said ibad, and both of them were mentioned together, for example, that they are created slaves. And the Imams put emphasis in different narrations and add words which we said are also not a contradiction, rather this can just be an emphasis upon the original statement. We find that Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, in one of the narrations, he gave what? An analogy of building a construction, and if you build a construction too high it will collapse. So do not put their status that so-called high to the level that you would make them partners with Allah Azza wa Jal. And one sentence which he said in this as well, which will come later on, is وَقُولُوا بِنَا مَا شِئْتُمْ فَلَن تَبْلُغُوا. So say about us what you like, but you will never reach this. Meaning what? Meaning that you can say in the most eloquent and beautiful of words about their merits. For example, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Imams. You can describe in the most eloquent words and phrases about their merits, but you will never do justice and reach their true station. So this is what is meant by this narration here, that you can say what you like about their merits, but that doesn't mean that you will necessarily reach that. And we find later on in other narrations, so we'll go to the other narrations that we read. We read about 5 narrations, I believe, before that. The next one in Ghurar al-Hikam by Amir al-Mu'mineen, attributed to Imam Ali, where he says that beware of Ghulu, إِيَّاكُمْ وَالْغُلُو فِينَا قُولُوا إِنَّا مَرْبُوبُونَ. So say that we are bondsmen of Allah, beware of Ghulu about us, and then believe about our merits as you like. So this is one variation in narration 6. Narration 7 is again attributed to Imam Ali alayhi salam, and this is in Tabrasi's al-Ihtijaj, where it says that do not exceed us to a level that it becomes ubudiyya, that you are worshipping us, putting us in worship. And then say about us what you like. وَلَن تَبْلُغُوا وَإِيَّاكُمْ وَالْغُلُو كَالْغُلُو النَّصَارَى فَإِنِّي بَرِيءٌ مِنَ الْغَالِينَ. So the Imam says here, let's read it, do not exceed, لا تتجاوزوا بنا العبودية. So do not exceed in describing us in mentioning about us and believing about us, that you would put us to the level where you are worshipping us. Say about us as you like, and you will not reach that. So again, you can say as much as you want in the most beautiful of ways. You can describe their fada'il, but you will not reach that. And then beware of ghulu, such as the ghulu of the Nasara. So Imam Ali alayhi salam here gives them as an example, because as we know, they exceeded the status in their beliefs. According to our beliefs, they are free to believe as they like. And we do not insult them, of course. We just mention the differences. Where the Christians, they believe that Isa alayhi salam is God in the flesh, and that Maryam, salamullahi alayha, mother Mary, she gave birth to God. And we seek refuge obviously in this belief as Muslims, because you are saying that God is dependent. If God is given birth to through a woman, it now means God has some sort of dependence, and he is limited in a type of form. And so you've limited God, and you're also making him weak. So we do not have this. This was a type of ghulu where they put him to the status of lordship, and then they actually lowered him in the sense that saying that God needs to be born and is dependent on a woman. So this is something, of course, according to the Christian theology, we as Muslims, we do not agree with this. And this is a type of ghulu. So Imam Ali alayhi salam warns the people that do not do the ghulu as the Nasaras did in their deen. So do not take me as a God similar to how they did. And then he says that verily I am bari min al-ghalin, fa inni bari'un min al-ghalin. The Imam says that I am free. I disassociate myself from the ghulat. And it's funny because as we see in some of these Ghulat communities, like for example I was watching one video of them in Germany on the Shahadat last Shahr Ramadan of Imam Ali alayhi salam. They were doing tatbir, they were striking their scalps and letting out blood, and some of these Ghulat, they were saying Ali Allah. We seek refuge in such statements. They were saying Ali Allah. And what's funny about this is that Imam Ali alayhi salam, he's saying that he is bari, he has disassociated himself from the ghulat, from these exaggerators, yet they spend so much time in making these types of gatherings and majalis, which they do exaggeration and utter kufr and shirk in, and spending all their time for a figure which would punish them and who disassociates from them. So this is what this reminds us of. So this narration, this variation in Al-Ihtijaj by Tabarasi, says that Imam Ali alayhi salam says, do not exceed the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam in their status, where you'd put them as partners of Allah. Say what you want about their merits, and beware of ghulu like the Nasara did. And this is where he gives an example to previous nations who fell into a type of ghulu. And as we know, Allah Azza wa Jal says in the Holy Quran, قُلْ يَا أَهْلَ الْكِتَابِ لَا تَغْلُوا فِي دِينِكُمْ. Allah Azza wa Jal says, O people of the book, do not exceed in your religion. And this is the verb of ghulu, which is used in the Quran, and where ghulu is mentioned, how the people of the book exceeded in their religion when they said that Prophet Isa alayhi salam, that Prophet Jesus is part of the Trinity, and that he is God in the flesh, and that he was born from his mother. God was born and limited in this form. Allah Azza wa Jal also warns in the Holy Quran about this. We see the next narration, which is the 8th narration, and there are even more variants, but we'll stop at the 8th narration, where Imam Ali alayhi salam speaks to Salman al-Farsi, the great companion, and this is mentioned in Sheikh Saduq's Ma'ani al-Akhbar. So let us read this narration, where Imam Ali alayhi salam says, Ya Salman, nazziluna anir rububiyyah. O Salman, bring us down from the position of divinity and raise us above the position of humans, as we are above them, and purify that which is applicable to you. Then you can say, so this is the part again, ثُمَّ قُولُوا فِينَا مَا شِئْتُمْ. So say as you like about our merits. So analysing this narration, Imam Ali alayhi salam, he is advising Salman that do not put us to the position of divinity. Again, a warning against ghulu and shirk, but raise us above the position of human beings. Now one person might say, isn't this ghulu? You're not saying they're humans. Yes, we are saying they're humans, but we are saying that they are above the human beings in their status and in how they act and in how they are. They are human beings, but they are above the common human being. Just like we find even the Mukhalifeen agree on this as well. And Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab mentions this in his Kitab al-Tawhid, one of their favourite books, when they learn about their so-called monotheism. Obviously they believe in Tajsim, their man god. But they mention about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that even his spit would heal, and that he healed Imam Ali alayhi salam's eye with his saliva. So it shows us that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the features of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the features of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam are way above and incomprehensible to the normal human being. Therefore, do not compare them with normal human beings. Yes, they are creations, they clearly say that. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions in the Quran that he is a bashar, but in terms of some of their features and how they act and in how they live, they have also that difference from the average human being. So do not degrade their status. This is what we want to say. Do not degrade their status, and do not just say, for example, oh, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he was just a scholar, he was just an alim like other ulama. This is doing taqsir, where you put down their status and you do not recognize their true fada'il. And this is what we as Shia want to avoid, because some people, dear brothers and sisters, they've done this. They've put the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam down, and this will bring me on to my next point when discussing these narrations. So again, he says to Salman, do not put us, Imam Ali alayhi salam says, do not put us up to that level of divinity. Bring us down from the position of divinity and raise us above the position of humans as we are above them, and purify that which is applicable to you. Then you can say ثُمَّ قُولُوا فِينَا مَا شِئْتُمْ, and then say anything about our merits, and we will obviously clarify this. So a crucial point, dear brothers and sisters, no one is denying fada'il. No one is denying the great merits of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, and I myself are deficient in narrating such merits and describing such merits. Many of us are deficient in this, and we are lower than that level of doing so, although we try. So no one is denying the merits of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, because when we discuss against Ghulu, many people say, so are you saying that we shouldn't speak about the merits of Ahlul Bayt? No, we're not saying this. For example, how the whole universe and how the world is under their authority, in the sense that they must have the divine obedience. They have divine obedience. Allah Azza wa Jalla has said in the Quran, He has given the authority, the obedience to Him, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and those in authority who are the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. And by the way, having authority doesn't mean controlling the whole universe or being in the control of the whole universe, like the belief of Tawhid or false accusations, as one of the Mukhalifeen polemicists attributed to myself. No, we are saying that they have the divine authority over all of the universe, in the sense that people have to obey them. So people might misunderstand, saying, oh, you're saying that Allah created them and now they are just in charge of the whole world and controlling everything. I never said that. So people obviously will try to mix around these words or take them out of context. Or for example, when we mention the bravery of Imam Ali alayhi salam, we mention their merits relating to bravery and humbleness. How Imam Ali alayhi salam would not leave the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the battles, and how he would show this bravery. Or how when someone spat at him, he would take a time out, so he was not fighting this person for the cause of himself and his nafs, rather for Allah Azza wa Jal. Or how Imam Hussein alayhi salam, we find that he was someone of humbleness, that where we see the tyrants would sit above people, maybe sit in a chair above people and not sit with the servants, and have this type of arrogance. The hujjah of Allah Azza wa Jal on this earth, Imam Hussein was reported to have sat on the floor with those poor type of people and eat with them, and then also invite them to eat with him. This is the kind of humbleness Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam had, or how they would even help these types of slaves or servants in particular matters. And then we can also mention the miracles of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. There are numerous miracles mentioned in the books of ahadith and ulama of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, which of course we do not have time to mention here. Or we can mention the merits of how they are created from Allah Azza wa Jal's nur. Now this does not mean they are part of Allah, because Allah Azza wa Jal is not murakkab. Allah does not have parts. Allah is not compound. Because this reminds me of one Ghali who said that, okay, you're accepting they're created from Allah's nur, so how are they not a part of Allah's nur? Ya Jahil Ghali. Allah Azza wa Jal from the beginning, if you had actually read the ahadith and studied the Tawhid of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, you would have seen that the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam clearly stated that Allah Azza wa Jal does not have parts. And this is the type of weak istidlal that they do, because they listen to some of these zakirin or these Ghulat themselves, who have taken from obscure sources who have not studied, and then they come up with the wrong conclusion. So I remember someone, when we mentioned this point that the Ahlul Bayt are created from the nur, they said that must mean they're part of Allah. No, this nur is something that is created which we cannot comprehend, and because of their great status, Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, the Prophet, are created from this nur. And even narrations that Mu'mineen are created from Allah's nur as well, although it would be a lower type of nur. We can also mention fada'il about the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam in the alam al-dhar, before this world, and their belief in Allah Azza wa Jal and submission to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa and accepting him in the realm before this realm. However, of course, as I said, I am deficient of even mentioning these great fada'il, and this lecture is against Ghulu. So again, the reason to mention these points before we finish, dear brothers and sisters, was to show that yes, we have no problem in mentioning the fada'il, and we are against those people who just put them as normal ulama and they do not recognize their fada'il. We are strongly against this. But what we are saying is that when you mention their fada'il, you should not say things which are kufr, things which you have made up. This is what we are against. And in the next episode we will show a dua from Imam Rida alayhi salam, where he demonstrates this for us about not saying things which are made up and which they have not said by themselves. So when someone wants to speak about the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, and they know that they have affirmed their status as abid, as ibad, as makhluqeen, as creations, then it does not mean that they can say, oh, I'm going to praise Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, so I'm going to make up things. I'm going to make up merits which are not actually merits, which do not exist. And this is how these narrations we will show should be understood according to other sayings of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam in a holistic way, because Nawasib say, or you can say anything about Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. So the narrations must be understood by logic of the Quran and the Sunnah. And anyone who has studied a hadith know that we do jam' of riwayat. We bring all the riwayat in one topic, as many as possible together that we have in our possession, and then after reading all of them we derive a conclusion rather than taking any random type of narration. Because according to Nawasib's interpretation, where they say that, oh, they try to force it on this type of narration, and the Ghulat as well, you can say anything about them. Could we then say that the Imams are greater than the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or that they are prophets? No one would accept this. So join us for the next episode, where we will continue with the dua of Imam Rida alayhi salam, and we will show how Ahlul Bayt clearly said that you cannot say things which they haven't said about themselves, and that will help us understand the part of all these narrations where it says وَقُولُوا فِي فَضْلِنَا مَا شِئْتُمْ, and say anything about our merits as you wish. So please join us for the 9th episode. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم ولعن أعداءهم.